Hey there everybody, my name is Kat Bowser. I'm your resident fantasy therapist and welcome back to my channel. Those of you here for the first time, welcome. My name is Kat Bowser. I'm a licensed therapist. I'm also a writer working on my first novel. And on my channel I like to talk about what I consider to be the heart of writing, which is the characters, and the heart of the characters is their psychology. So that's the angle I like to take with pretty much everything I talk about on my channel. So for today, we are tackling a topic my husband has been so generous to help me with, and that is the prospect of wilderness survival in fiction. So, when it comes to fiction, the main thing we usually see is either characters that are having to get food or they're having to pass through a forest or some kind of environment. So, what are some very basic survival techniques that you see the books getting wrong, and what is the way to get them right?
Making fire first. Surviving any situation is totally situational. It depends on where you are. We always went by, another mantra is what will kill you the fastest. If I'm sitting in the middle of the desert, obviously dehydration is going to be my number one because it's really hot outside. There's a lack of water. That's why it's a desert. So, I'm going to want to worry about that first. But if I'm in a boreal forest with streams and ways to get water, then dehydration isn't going to be my number one. It's probably going to be shelter. Shelter is probably going to kill me the fastest. We were talking before, we always learn the rule of threes. So, the rule of threes is you can survive 3 minutes without oxygen. So, if you fall in the water, drowning or whatever, or buried in snow or whatever, usually it's about 3 minutes before you are starting to have really serious brain damage. 30 minutes if you've fallen through ice in the cold, where you're really going to be suffering from really severe hypothermia, possibly death, if you don't dry off and get warm. 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food. And that's your ladder. Like I said, every situation is different. You're going to have to take that situation, look at what will kill me the fastest or what will kill your character the fastest, and then having them deal with that. And that's where people make mistakes. I guess that, just following that rule of threes and just looking at that survival ladder and just saying, okay, you know, what is going to kill me the fastest out here? Along with that, we were talking about dehydration. Another myth, oh, don't drink out of a stream. Well, if you're a couple days out and nobody's found you yet, usually people are found in the first 24 to 48 hours. If you haven't been found yet, I would rather get Giardia, which is a waterborne pathogen,
Mm-hmm.
or parasites. I mean, yes, they're going to give you raging diarrhea. You're going to, but you're not going to die of dehydration.
Okay.
I would rather go to the hospital later on and be treated for a parasite, an intestinal parasite, than be laying dead next to a stream because I didn't want to drink the water.
Okay.
So,
Well, yeah, we were kind of talking before we started recording. We were talking about 127 Hours, which, for those of you that don't know, one, I recommend it. It's a good movie, but you got to have a strong stomach for it. It's about a true story about a gentleman that got himself lost in a canyon, got his arm pinned, and ended up having to cut off his own arm to get out. And he kind of came to that decision, kind of what you're talking about, weighing his choices, because I think it was day 6 and he had been without water, I think, for 3 days, when he finally decided, okay, I'm either gonna definitely die of dehydration here, or I can cut my arm off and try to get to help. And that's what he ended up doing. And he did find help, and he actually did survive from it. So,
yeah.
weighing your choices.
Well, the key to, like I said, survival is just keeping calm. They always told us if you get in a situation where you're lost, they said, sit down for a good 15 minutes and just calm yourself. We talked about before, when your adrenaline's pumping, that survivalist part of your brain is active, the rest of it is not. You're not going to make the best decisions. And so just sit down, calm down, and evaluate your situation and just keep, and the other thing we always learned was keep positive. They always said do little things to better your situation. If your shelter, you were really cold last night, okay, we'll put more on your shelter. Or, lift yourself up off the ground with boughs from pine trees or something. Make your situation better. You're not only going to make your situation better, but you're giving yourself tasks to do. So
Okay. So I think tackling this part, let's just kind of take it, I guess, by environment. I think that's the best way to do it. So within a forest, you said that is ideal, essentially, for survival.
well, yeah, you have a lot of wood, you have a lot of materials. Um, I mean, you're going to be in a colder region, but you're going to have more access to water and shelter, building materials.
Okay, so in that situation, I think a lot of times what stories focus on is them trying to feed themselves. Now, I think a lot of stories do kind of get right. They usually don't have the character trying to find mushrooms because we have some mushrooms that will kill you. Um, but what I do see is, in a lot of stories, it's like, okay, I'm gonna make a bow and arrow, or I'm gonna make
I'm going to go
try,
hunt big game.
yeah,
And if you think about hunters today, they have thousands and thousands of dollars worth of the best equipment in the world, and more times than not will come home empty handed. Uh, so, food should be one of your lowest priorities. I mean, there are stories of people that have to do long term survival, and that does become a priority. But again, we talked about those rule of threes:
hmm
water, 3 days; food, 3 weeks for the average person.
hmm
So, I mean, yes, you're going to be very hungry, and yes, it is important to eat, but unless you're a botanist or an expert, don't go eating stuff you find in the woods. Because again, there are plenty of mushrooms out there that will kill you. There are berries and everything that will kill you. So I mean, unless you're an expert in the field, don't go just eating stuff you find, in the woods.
good advice.
I mean, we learned how to identify certain plants, like grapevine. Grapevine is a parasitic plant. It's a vine that grows on trees. It's got a very distinctive leaf. Now, you can't eat. It's not like regular grapevine. It won't grow grapes. But the leaves, what you can do is you can chew on the leaves and then spit them out, and it tastes like grapes. But that'll give you moisture in your mouth, and it will give you a little bit of vitamin C, some calories, very minimal, but some. So I mean, like I know that you can eat cattails, the roots of cattails. So, I mean, there are certain plants that we learned, mint. I know how to identify mint,
Mhm.
things like that. But other than that, I would never just go eating berries or because, I mean, you're taking a huge risk.
So unless your character is verified to have been training under a healer or something and knows plants, they shouldn't be just grabbing random plants. Okay. Um, what about shelter? I know you've mentioned before a lean-to, but I've also seen, usually I don't know why, but it seems like in stories they're always having people try to build like this huge cabin or something. And it's like I think that would be a waste of material.
Well, waste of material, but also, like, if you're in a cold area, the more inner space you have in your thing, the more air that, or more body heat you're going to lose. So, actually, in like a forest area, you want a very tight little shelter. The ones that I built in the past, I usually lean a log like against another log, and then stack twig or stack sticks, and then bark, and then branches on top of that, pine needles, leaves, and stuff to insulate it from the rain, but also to keep it warm. So it's a nice tight little area. It's going to keep you dry. It's going to keep you warm. Very simple. Not it doesn't. I built mine in probably 2 hours.
Okay.
So very simple to make, but very effective.
Okay. And I think the last one I want to talk about on the forest one is predators. Um, a lot of times, because we like to add tension to our stories, there's bears or there's wolves or there's something like that. So I know you mentioned with bears it depends obviously if you're faced with a bear, but what should a character who is knowledgeable about this stuff do regarding predators?
I would say have them look around for signs of predators.
Okay.
Scat or poop is
Okay.
going to tell you what's in the area. That poop is going to tell you if you look at it more closely, kind of break it apart, you're going to see if there's bones in it and it looks. So, different animals, elk, deer, antelope, all those things are going to have poop that looks like little balls.
Mm-hmm.
Rabbits. Um, Bears are going to have more human like poop. Cats, like mountain lions and stuff like that, are going to look like house cat poop but bigger. So, I mean, looking around, if you see a bunch of bear scat in your area, maybe move a little ways away because obviously there's a bear in that area.
Mm-hmm.
You want to be near water, but I wouldn't go right next to water because animals are going to be attracted to that water also. So,
Okay.
But as
Um,
far as like, I mean, wolves and stuff, I mean, just a fire's going to keep things pretty far away. Um, but just real basic self defense stuff, sharp stick. I mean,
okay.
making a lot of noise, because I mean, unless you're in the Siberian tundra, you're not, I'm not really going to worry about wolves. I mean, I know you want to create tension and stuff, so you can. I mean, there have been instances where people have been attacked by wolves, packs of wolves and stuff, even coyotes.
Mhm.
Um, so, you know,
Okay. But generally, predators, if you're causing a lot of trouble for them, they're going to try and find something that's an easier kill.
well, yeah, it's all about the easiest kill. It's all about the easiest calories. And so, if you're a danger to them, if you're an unknown to them, like a wolf pack, they're going to stay away from you because they're going to be going for the easy kills. They're going to be going for the deer, antelope, whatever. Um, they're going to stay away from the unknowns.
Okay. So let's shift and go desert. Considering we live in one. Um, like I said, I don't see a lot of stories where they have characters travel through desert or snow. So, regarding desert survival, what is different from forest survival?
Water.
Water.
Water's probably your most crucial. But like I said, if you're in the desert in the wintertime, temperature can be a major factor. It gets cold here, especially out in the deserts. It gets very cold here. We have snow regularly. It snowed a couple times this year. It doesn't stick, but it does out in the desert. So water would be my probably number one because, like I said, 3 days on average. But if you're out here in the middle of summertime and you're lost or you're stuck in the desert, you can die in a day or a day and a half without water if it's really, really hot because your body's perspiring. Your body loses a lot of water through sweat. So your priorities change. I mean, I'm going to want shelter for shade, not necessarily for rain. So my shelter is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be kind of a lean-to. Building materials are going to be different because there are not a lot of trees in the desert. So you have to use a lot of scrub brush and whatever you can find. Saguaro cactus ribs or whatever. I mean, that's why we did our survival camps in the desert because if you can survive in the desert, you can survive probably most anywhere.
Okay. What about this trope, which I forgot to mention earlier? A lot of times, characters, if they're stuck in a desert, they will travel at night. Is that smart or is that stupid?
Well, I mean, so again, if you're lost, you want to stay put.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have to travel, then yeah, I would travel at night. Sleep during the day, make a shelter that's shady. You're not going to perspire as much. You're going to save that energy for when it's. But I mean, again, most things in the desert come out at night.
Because of that
So
reason.
yeah, I mean, you're going to be a little bit safer from snakes, but scorpions, tarantulas, other coyotes, other mountain lions, they're all going to hunt at night because they're the same thing. Hunting during the middle of the day is dangerous for them. They get overheated,
Mm-hmm.
and it's a little bit harder to navigate. We have a bunch of prickly things called cacti.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah. If I had to move, I would move.
When it's cooler.
I know a couple years ago, a grandfather and grandson got stuck out here, and I know the grandfather went for help, made it about 8 miles. The grandson went to go help him and made it about 4 or 5 and they were traveling in the middle of the day, and they died.
Mm.
So but they had said if they had stayed in place and sat in the shade and waited, it made it really hard because the rescuers found their car,
Mm-hmm.
but they weren't there.
Gotcha.
So, I mean, if they had stayed, they could have found shade.
Okay.
And again, they told us, one big trope, I guess or the people would always ask is if you're lost in the woods and you come upon a cabin, first of all, it's a creepy cabin, stay away from it. If the Blair Witch has taught me anything, it's to stay away from the creepy cabins. But if it's a regular cabin, kids would always say, well, can you break into it? I'm like, guys, if I'm dying, I'm sorry, I'm going to break in. I'm not going to vandalize the place. I'm not going to, spray paint, Steven was here.
Uh-huh.
But I'm going to make my situation better. And if breaking in is what I need to do it. I'm like, I don't think anybody in their right mind is going to, prosecute you for breaking into a cabin, Our photography teacher, Anne, who was up at Camp Tonazona, when she was 9, got lost and actually had a camera and was following a butterfly. And she got away from her group and realized that she'd been following this butterfly for like 45 minutes and was totally lost. Found a cabin. She actually broke a window to get in and survived there overnight. And the rescuers found her the next day. She actually had to spend the night by herself. I mean, that's scary as heck. But the cabin owners didn't get mad at her. You know, she was surviving. You do what you do when you need to survive.
Okay. Good. That is a good point because that is a trope that I think is important to address. Because, I mean, I think especially with when I was little, you know, you're taught, oh, don't break into anybody else's property. But like you said, priorities shift. If it's a survival situation, I'm sorry.
Well, another one is like people get lost in their cars in the desert, and they don't want to use the resources in their cars because they've worked hard for this car. So they don't want to rip out the hoses and the things that they would need to help make shade and make their things better. Your car's dead. And like I said, with the stream thing, I would rather drink the stream water and get sick than have them find me dead next to it. I would rather tear my car apart that I've worked so hard for than find me sitting in the driver's seat dead because I refuse to do, that drives me crazy when I hear people like, well, they found them in their car. Or they found, well, man, there's so many things you could have used in that car to, and that's why I love that Dual Survival show, man. They'll rip something apart. I mean, they're taking everything they can to make that, Now, I'm not saying if you get stranded in the first 6 hours, start ripping your tires out and everything, but we're talking about extreme survival situations.
Right. Okay. And going off of that, Arctic/cold.
So when we would do our snow camps, one of the first things we would always learn to do is we'd make snow caves. It's basically you mound up a huge pile of snow or you find a snowdrift. You dig out a tunnel. You kind of hollow out the middle of it. You make a cold well in the middle, which is basically a body-sized well. All the cold air sinks down because heat rises, cold falls, and you make shelves to sleep on. And we used to sleep in them. And it'd be like 10 degrees outside, but inside the shelter, because snow is mostly air, and actually air is a very good insulator, it would be 30 to 40 degrees cool or warmer inside the snow cave than outside. So again, if you're in the snow in the Arctic, what's going to kill you the fastest? Well, we talked about the rules of 3. Hypothermia, 3 hours can possibly kill you. So, again, that's situational. I would go after shelter first.
Okay.
I can melt snow to make water. We talked about don't eat snow.
Right.
So.
What about this situation? Because I think we talked about this once, but I can't remember what you ended up saying. So, obviously, if your clothes are wet and soaking, they're just making you colder. But in a survival situation, you want to have some form of protection. So, is the myth roll in snow, yay or nay?
That's true.
That's true.
So if you've fallen through the ice, which actually I have before, and it's a very harrowing experience, you want to get out of those wet clothes immediately. Those wet clothes are going to be sapping the heat from your body. And actually, like I said, snow is mostly air. And so rolling in snow or rubbing snow on your body is actually going to dry you off. You want to try to get those clothes dry. Hopefully you'll have a fire. You can dry them off and, or if you need to, get in a sleeping bag. If somebody is suffering from hypothermia, one of your characters, the thing we always learned to do was, take their clothes off, get them into a sleeping bag, and get in the sleeping bag with them, and just hug them, because body heat transfers very well from person to person. If you can get out of your shirt and just go skin to skin, it's also a good way, like if you were the girl. But
I saw that coming.
No, but that will warm them up. Their clothes can be drying, but it's the best. Yeah, you don't want to be in those wet clothes. Those wet clothes will kill you fast. So get out of those wet clothes. It sounds crazy, rub snow on yourself, but it's actually a good way to dry stuff off.
What, Ripley, you want to be in the video? It's our dog. Okay, so I've actually studied hypothermia for my novels and stuff. So I know there's different levels to it.
This is Ripley.
Say hi, Ripley. um, so I know there's different levels to it. You know, there's mild, there's moderate, there's profound, and then there's dead. Um, so regarding hypothermia, I think that's one situation where even though it would be better to stay put if you're lost, if you have someone that has hypothermia, don't you need to get them help like now?
Well, no, you need to warm them up now.
Okay.
But I mean, if it's blowing 50 below outside, having a person with hypothermia, you know, what I would do is I would kill my tauntaun, cut open my tauntaun, and put my friend inside the tauntaun. But that's just me as a nerd.
Star Wars fan, obviously.
But no, I mean, but getting him warm, you know, if you look at that movie, getting him warm was his first concern. And putting him inside that dead tauntaun, it was warm. And if you hear, it's while he builds the shelter, while he builds presumably a snow cave. So getting them warm is your first, you know, I mean, you're going to, if you're getting out of there, presumably you're lost, so you're miles away. You know, like we said, 3 hours. You're probably not going to get them out in 3 hours. You're going to get more lost. So you need to warm them up now because, you know, I mean, sometimes it's as little as 30 minutes if they're in wet clothes.
Okay.
So, and for those of you that don't know, hypothermia is your body is too cold. Hyperthermia, I always remember because you're hyper. When you're hyper, you get hot, is your body is too hot. So in Arizona, we worry about that one more than we do hypothermia, but they are both equally deadly.
Okay. And
one you were talking about with that is if you do find, let's say, a cabin or your characters find a cabin, do not draw them a really hot bath and throw them in. What you're going to do is create shock, and you can actually give them a heart attack. What happens is your body warms up too fast. You need to gradually warm them up. You need to get them dry, get them wrapped in blankets. You know, don't force feed them hot chocolate. I mean, you want to warm them up gradually. You know, and I mean, if you have like, you know, hot cocoa or whatever, that's a good thing. You know, you want to get those calories in, but you just don't want to shock the system. And the same thing with hyperthermia. You don't want to, like, you know, what we were always taught was, you know, you don't feed them ice cold water. Actually, you want to feed them almost lukewarm, or not warm water, but lukewarm water, because you don't want to shock the system. If the body warms up or cools off too fast, it can't handle it, and that can actually send them into cardiac arrest. So.
Okay. Yeah, that's something that I'm starting to see less of, which I'm glad. But I think it is still out there.
So no throwing them in the hot bathtub. That will kill them.
Yeah, bad idea. Let's see. One thing that I looked up, frostbite. You don't want to rub frostbite like this, even though lots of movies do that, because...
Well, what is frostbite?
Frostbite is where essentially your tissue has introduced ice crystals into your tissue.
It's a burn.
It's a burn. So when you rub them, you're like rubbing your hand or whatever is frostbitten. You're actually breaking those ice crystals, and it's digging into your flesh. So it's making it worse. Same thing with what you were talking about with hypothermia. Is you want to warm it up gradually. I think the last thing about like the Arctic that I think might come up, at least in fiction, is again the predators. And I think one thing with the Arctic, because I know what authors like to do, there's a polar bear or there's a big walrus. I don't know. There's something very big that could eat you.
Polar bears I would never want to mess with. They are big, mean, meat-eating machines. There's really nothing you can do against a polar bear except for avoid them if you can. But, you know, if they're hungry, you're definitely on the menu.
Okay.
A walrus?
Oh, I don't know.
Unless you're that weird walrus in Alice in Wonderland, then, I don't think you have to worry about a walrus.
You know what I mean? Like big predators that are in the Arctic. Obviously, I don't live in the Arctic. But, you know, things like that. Like, there was that one story about the woman that beat the bear off her husband with a snow shovel.
She beat that bear to death with a snow shovel.
Okay, you have to tell the story then.
So, in Alaska, there was a older couple and the older man was outside doing something and got attacked by a grizzly bear. And grizzly bears are incredibly tough animals. I don't know why my dog is giving me like the stink eye right now. She's like looking like giving me the grizzly bear stare. She's just like doesn't know what's going on. That's why we named her Ripley after the Aliens character, and her brother is named Bishop. um, but I mean, grizzly bears. This grizzly bear comes and attacks the man, and this older woman, she didn't, out of panicked, and just grabbed the snow shovel and literally beat the bear to death. She is an Alaskan legend now, because she beat a bear to death with a snow shovel. But, so, I mean, yeah, predators are... Now, if you're in deep, like, Arctic, like, during the wintertime, bears you're really not going to worry about, because they hibernate.
Right.
Unless you, like, want to go explore a cave, and...
Right. Okay. So, since we're coming up on almost an hour now, why don't you talk about the movies and books that you think did it correctly?
One of the first survival books I ever read was Hatchet, and then Hatchet 2, some of my favorite books. I love it because it's about a kid who survives with just a hatchet, along those same mantra. I don't like the movie, but I love the book, My Side of the Mountain. Again, about a kid that goes off on his own to survive and learns through mistakes. I love the movie Castaway. That's 127 hours, you said?
Yep.
Obviously, it's not one of my favorite movies because I barely know the title, but 127 hours because I think, again, it highlights the mistakes that he made. What else was I saying? I think that's it. There's not a whole lot of books and stuff that get it right, but there are a few that do, and those are the few I think that,
Except, we were talking about Castaway because one of the fire issue, they show him struggling with fire, and then when he finally makes fire, he's so excited, he's like screaming and yelling. But you also brought up the coconut water.
Yeah. One thing we didn't mention is, if you ever are lost, international sign of distress. Do you know what it is?
Piles of 3.
Anything in 3. SOS is ... dash ...
Mm-hmm.
3s. Most countries, that's why it's called the international sign for distress, is 3s. 3 fires. 3 large piles of sticks. He tries to signal a boat, but it doesn't happen. And So, but yeah, we forgot to mention that. So,
but that's a good point. And I also like it when survival movies take into account the psychological effects of like isolation.
Wilson.
Wilson, yes. I will praise that movie for that because fun fact, if a human is without human contact, like any contact at all, about between 38 to 45 days, your brain will create voices to give you something to
For
talk
me, it's
to.
about 45 minutes.
Yeah, you're a little different. But
I cried when Wilson fell off the raft.
I did too.
I mean, I was like, it's a stupid volleyball, but when Wilson falls off the raft and he's so sad, and you just feel for him because he's so alone. Yeah, I love that movie.
Okay, so is there any last bit you want to throw out there about survival we haven't talked about, or any emphasis you want to make on it? Because again, with books, I think it's people traveling more often than not. But I think having them do survival correctly while they're traveling is important.
Well, I mean, it's not only important for them, but it's important for you. I guess the one thing is, if you're going to go camping, always have a knife on you, always carry a whistle on you. When we went in Boy Scouts, if you did not have a whistle, you could not go camping. A whistle is a very easy, distinguishable tone with almost no energy. Screaming, I believe you can only scream for like 3 or 4 hours before literally you're tearing your vocal cords. But a whistle just travels, and I have several whistles in my survival kit. When we're going to visit my parents up in Prescott, We have at least 2 gallons of water in the car. We have a first aid kit. I usually bring my survival kit. It's just, I mean, yeah, it's on a main road, but stuff happens. So, just, I guess, always carry a knife and always have a whistle, always have a way to make fire.
Sounds like good advice. Well, thanks. Like I said, I think this is a topic that shows up in a lot of books, and like we've talked about, they're not always done correctly. So, just a little bit of research for you guys so that if you're going to put this type of stuff in your books, you at least have an idea of what tropes to avoid, which ones to correct. And as always, thank you guys for chiming in. And if you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss when I upload. And we will see you guys next time. Thank you.